mentally. That to me is what you're talking about.
See, this is exactly where advertising is.
Okay.
And what is fascinating is that I've been spending some time with a number of geriatric psychiatrists, a whole new wave of them, that are very excited and are creating some exciting material. In fact, one of them, a Dr. Mark Agronin, that's in Miami at the Miami Jewish Health Hospital, and I have a podcast with him. But what Mark did is he created a new classification names of older individuals that are doing things. And I'm speaking to another psychiatric scientist in a couple of other podcasts that I have. But that's exactly the sweet spot of where it matches up with perception. And, I've said this before, you can have surgeries, you can have lotions and potions and pills and supplements and colonics, but the part that needs to be, the big colonic is your brain that needs to be changed. So it's understanding that you can see individuals that you might think are very interesting, and this is people that I call masters of age, that are continuing to work in their 80s and 90s. I was fortunate, along with Kat, to go meet Tootsie Tamanez, who is at Snow's Barbecue, and she's 85. And she told me, my dad said as long as...
the best barbecue around.
Oh, it is incredible. It was nominated like above all the others,
Oh,
right?
yeah, it's phenomenal. Here she is.
Yeah, so Miss Tamanez, or Tootsie, said, my dad said as long as I keep working, I'll be happy. And she says, to be honest with you, seriously, I don't have time to think about how old I am. And now there is a man that that is 86 years old. He does logos and book design at Kelly Graphics. And he is at it, and I'm going to be doing a little short on him. But what I found is people that can just do a little bit of some mental exercise of their own belief system can start to feel better about themselves. Now, it's tough because some of this stuff has been really laid down, that they've been told by society that they're not worth anything. So they want to make sure that they get along, and we know now that people will do things to their own detriment. But there are individuals that, like I have an uncle who's 94 who is unbelievable, funny, original will improv back to me. And it blows me away. And then it's also just a very hungry, deep thinker that is always interested in different things. And so I see these individuals that are almost like, I swear, they're like Teflon-esque. It's like when you tell them, oh my God, you're my hero, at 100 they'll go like, that's the last thing I want to be. And they'll dismiss it, and then they'll go to, tell me about yourself. And there's a woman, Betty X. Davis, that's 102 that I just had spoken to, and she's still writing. She's helping young children book authors. And she says, if one more person tells me I'm their role model, I'm going to shoot myself. But she's been able to do this judo move to where she tries to get them over their exclamations about her and then dives in. And I think having that is really fantastic.
You referenced something there that I haven't heard you elaborate on, and that is, you talked about quick wit, you talked about a little bit about humor and how much your uncle comes back to you, back and forth, the improvisation and what have you. How does an outlook, don't take yourself so seriously sort of thing, how does self-deprecating humor play into this? How does a lighthearted approach to life play into this?
Well, it depends on the person, but even if you talk to somebody that sounds like Eeyore, that I don't know, that kind of thing, if you just get someone to practice, it's something that they feel is inspirational to them. And I had a very interesting situation I want to tell you about in a second, but I think that humor is so vital, and as a continual teacher at 90, I don't know what he's 93, Mel Brooks sold out for a week in Las Vegas.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that can help you, if somebody was looking at a prescription,
Yeah.
I would tell them to please, once a day, find something that makes you laugh. And it's not just, oh, this is a sweet thing. It's truly chemically and neurologically, it sets off a set of systems within your brain that have such a systematic positive effect.
Who was and this was years ago, long before you started your work, who was ill in the hospital and asked to have Three Stooges movies brought in?
That's right. That's right. He had cancer, and he kind of laughed his way out of that a little bit. You're right. I write about him in my book.
Yeah. Was it Norman something?
Right. I'll think about that in a minute. And to think about the name, I wanted to bring this up. As we get a little bit older and we think we can't remember, there's more of a pressure that's blocking that of stressing out than what we're doing, and that's what's happening right now. But no, but
you know that old joke Bob Hope used to say about the 3 signs of aging. 1 is you forget names.
Right.
2, you forget to zip up. And 3, you forget to zip down.
Right. I enjoy, though, making fun of people who say they're too old.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of, God love them, there's a lot of people that I went to school with, and they're older than they're older than their 90-something-year-old parents, because again, they think that. But you realize that what's so fantastic about this issue is it's so magnetic for people of all kinds of thought, people in different types of politics, people in different types of of ages and wherever they are. And it's really extraordinary as a way to build a camaraderie in a community, just not to have to talk about what we see in the news. And there is a gentleman that I met this morning who sort of saved my life at when I was trying to make sure that this was working, this recording.
Oh, yeah.
And he told me how he was looking at himself aging, and he was he was trying to deconstruct it, and he said, that's what your pals are for. And the idea is that, I've got these pals, Tuck, and we all sit around, and I realize how important that is in terms of having other men, and we see how important it is with women. We see this with the book club and how they share ideas. But within the community, he says the big difference for him is that it's guys that span a number of different ages. And I think that that's so fantastic. I know that my mother was deep friends with people 20, 30, 40 years younger than her, because she liked that interchange, she liked that activity. And that's why that leads to this point about these new intergenerational communities that are diverse in age that you get to interact with.
My mother died at 89. And up until the day she died, her best friend was 30 some odd years old. And frankly, though, it was at the initiation of the 30-year-old who wanted to come and be with her, and it was in awe about, oh yeah, look at you, look how you're doing, and bless her heart, she was doing great, except she had macular degeneration.
Yes.
And she was a great artist, a fantastic, nationally, internationally recognized painter. And yet her attitude, after she lost her eyesight, which was kind of her reason for being after turning 60, whatever, from their painting, her attitude was just something that she spun off the younger woman, and vice versa. The younger woman came in and saw her and talked to her, and she said, I just love visiting with your mother, sort of thing. Your mother said the same thing. that intergenerational impact works two ways. It's not just the older person who benefits, the younger benefit as well, if they find that dynamic of working together, thinking together, laughing together, talking together.
Yes. There's a brilliant man that's in this. He's a Harvard trained physician. His name is Bill Thomas, and he talks about how he first brought pets into these so-called older living centers.
Yeah.
And he was involved with bringing children at risk, they were having a difficult time, and bringing them as part of what they had to do is work with older people. And then it blew these kids' minds, because that's the normal, actual homeostasis of life anyway, is that elders helped teach the youngest of children, while the parents, I was talking to this man. He's extraordinary. He's a shaman, and he was saying to me that, look, this is normal in all these early cultures. Is the parents went out and hunted and prepared things and so on, and the elders would teach the children. So to see that coming back is very exciting, and it's been a weird dynamic. Not a weird. It's been a common thread throughout my life. That my mother used to, when I was a little kid, she went to San Antonio, and she'd like to go to see some friends and shopping, and she dropped me off at this hotel, because we had been there by accident, and there were all these little ladies that were in the hotel, and I could talk to them about all my toys. I mean, it was such a fabulous audience, and they were rapt with attention, at least I thought so. And I said, G.I. Joe can do this. You don't know this. But they would order me like
Barbies, though, did you?
What is that?
The Barbies.
I didn't know. Didn't get to Barbies.
G.I. Joe.
Yeah, but Barbies just is ergonomically the same way as G.I. Joe. So anyway, the situation is that they would give me like a root beer float or something like that. So then that led to I talk about this in my book. My grandmother, when I was probably 8 years old, was down for Thanksgiving, and she got down on the floor with me in a little side room, and my mother was like running around, whipping herself up with the mashed potatoes and everything else. And she saw my grandmother on the floor teaching me how to play marbles. My grandmother, I'll be honest with you, was about 5 foot tall and about 185 pounds.
Oh,
and she said, my mother said, "Mom, act your age." And I'm thinking and my grandmother dismissed her.
Yeah.
But the thing is that has been a common thread, including a book I wrote called All My Fathers, which was an experience that I had in my hometown of talking to all these men that had all these little businesses. And I made it a point to go and talk to them, because in actuality, I was trying to figure out how to sort of unreel my dad's temper. So I thought, well, if I talk to these older guys, they'll kind of tell me. So it was an amazing experience, because I would go to this funeral home, and the handyman would take me on deliveries, and we went down to the dump where I found all these comic books, and God knows what he was throwing away. But I went to a grocery store, and this man had this tiny little grocery store, and he taught me about politics and how to cuss. And he would put out 3 pieces of super bubble gum, which was like the best thing in the world for me, right? And it was like a bartender putting out your drink and knows you're coming up to the bar, right? But so in this book, All My Fathers, there were all these people that were really passing wisdom to me, and I was so lucky. So, what has disturbed me is when I've gone to talk at a facility where there's older people, and I see that it's just older people there, and I want to be sympathetic to the fact if they have a spouse that has a dementia or has some other problem, to be at that facility. But I talked to these ladies when I was leaving, and they said, "Would you please come back?" And I swear to God, I felt like I was leaving an orphanage. It was crushing. And I thought, this is not a smart model. This this model will fall. And in fact, what's so fantastic is that boomers aren't going and moving in line to say we have to go and live in these facilities. So now they're remarketing and calling them active 60 plus, and they're trying to sort of shape and change these facilities. And I think there's going to be some really incredible new communities, which leads to the idea of bringing mentors from these communities to help younger people and to open up sort of mentor centers at these facilities.
And also interaction with the people who are there.
Exactly.
And people from outside.
Exactly.
You talk about a change in culture. Yeah. What do you mean by a change in culture?
What is so cool is I'll tell you this, when we see that bottled water, what are you talking about, bottled water? Coffee, $6 a cup? What are you talking about? So we see things in movies where something catches fire and it starts a new type of dance, a new set of clothes. From you can look at Saturday Night Fever and you're going, oh, that's just ridiculous. But that led to something else, that led to something else. So that is being aware of culture creators. And that means diving very deep into this, which is that psychological hitches to it. And that's what's exciting. There's a group that I know of that's in Hollywood where they're trying to look across the Me Too movement to gender, to racism, and then to ageism, and trying to figure out, well, Hollywood is an incredible distribution to all of this,
no
right?
Question. Culture
and literature.
Yeah.
So I believe, in my own sense of megalomania, that boomers are going to demand these new memes, these new terminologies, these new stories, and you're going to see a shift in culture. I mean, I've already started seeing it. There's opportunities in fashion, and that's where we go back in terms of design. Like I said, I was thinking about this when I was speaking a couple of weeks ago, and I said, we are probably 2 years away from very sexy, absorbent lingerie from Victoria's Secret. So, I mean, and it sounds, of course.
Come on, you're going to have to explain that.
Well, I'm just saying, you heard it here. I think that
you don't have any drawings, do you?
I don't have any drawings, but I'm just telling you that those things that I can just see it in terms of things becoming commonplace. Not that that's going to launch a whole new type of adult stuff, but I don't want to go there. I'm just saying that it's incredible the things that you would never expect, like that bottle of water, like that $6. And what do you mean the car's going to drive itself? So there are little things that sort of start to create cracks and fissures, and we find ourselves. It's amazing how in just a year, when you look back over the year, we accepted taking down those Confederate statues, and you're thinking, well, wait a minute. I understand we need to honor those people that were with our country and so on, but wow, we don't have the same kind. We understand if we were African American that wouldn't be the best thing to be looking around. So that opens up other opportunities, and I'm not trying to get into some hot point of politics here, but I mean, it's amazing that we see the acceptance of individuals and you're seeing this weird mesh of foods that's, well, it's part Thai and it's part Polynesian and it's part Mexican. So it's kind of a surfing hot taco. So I mean, so you see that kind of mashup, and what's so fantastic about it is that in the last 15 years that I've seen is major shifts that start to create that. I have total belief when you see things that I call a place called the magical obvious, where you see Uber come in and now is worth more than Hyatt, or you see, Airbnb that's worth more than Hyatt, and you see that Uber's being invested in by an automobile company.
Yeah.
So that it's happening.
Yeah. Well, and at warp speed almost, it's happening all around us. And but from the person who is concerned about ageism, the word that I heard you use a minute ago in that sense, person who's concerned about that, how do they accept these changes or participate in these changes? Is there something out there that says, here's what you need to do in order to become a part of, or to back off and say, oh, I'll never do that, that car's, I'm going to stick to my horse and buggy, rather than getting that thing that makes noise and has loud thing.
There are some emerging opportunities. The problem with some of the answers is that they condone an existing form of negativity. I'll have to explain that to you, but it's a weird thing. It's like they think they start crying out against ageism without solutions. And I don't have much time for, if we just start waving banners about how terrible it is that people are being affected. That's important, but let's figure out some kinds of solutions. So there are new ways, I feel, and I've been testing this, there are new types of resumes that would show a person's experience, not just in text, but it would start to figure out how this person could actually lift your company. Or there's a phrase that was coined, I did this with a friend of mine, it's called if you had another person within a company called a chief experience officer. And that older person could help that younger person, come into the company. I mean, when I first went to New York and I was working in advertising, and I think of all the mess ups that I probably could have been pushed out of a window of a building but it was one of those things where I was thinking about, that's the time when you're trying to figure out your life and your career, and that's where I see this thing about masters of age. But I want to get back to your point about ageism. It's important to think about, to try to find your own sense of value again. I bought a website domain called Age Valuator, and it's one of those pieces that I think that's needed, and there's a lot of material that's out there that will show that, and this shouldn't necessarily be, that older people will work at a little bit lesser wage, and and that they'll be there, and they're much more available and so on. But I don't want this to be, I don't want this to be a division between an older person and a millennial or something like that. So I think that there is an opportunity for creating a new way of harnessing the experience of older individuals. With the cost of academic education, I feel like there is, using these sort of mentorship centers, and not everybody is a good teacher, but I think that there should be age incubators that go into play to look at ageism and how to crack it. And say that, wait a minute, you didn't know about all these diamonds and jewels of individuals out there that could really give you a leg up for your company. It's my belief for a lot of the biggest startups that we see that are of large scale, on their board there are some older individuals that they rely on, whether it's their connection, their experience, and so on. But I think that this will start sort of what I'll say bleeding down and help other people. We need to be very open and inventive about how to see putting people to work. And it's extraordinary that you talk about your mom. There in today's New York Times, I'm just going to talk about this. There's this artist that had macular degeneration, and there's a word called Alterstyle, and it's a thing that it's a word that was developed about Rembrandt and Matisse, that later in life they recreated their art.
Oh, yeah.
So this artist that's 94 that has macular degeneration realizes he had to get really close to the canvas. Within that framework, he started creating new types of art. It was Rembrandt when he was probably in his 70s, and Matisse was confined to a bed, that he created decoupage, that he created a whole new piece of art.
Yeah.
And that, whew,
That's amazing when you think
that goes back to having faith in ourselves.
yeah.
So that goes back over to this other area about how could we help people reconnect with their sense of self-empowerment. So all these things, what I found is that you're looking around, you're going like, oh crap, all this stuff is wired together, and you want to tweak this piece because that's going to give the knee bone connected to the thigh bone and the thigh bone and so on. So when you realize the immensity of the population aging, there is going to be a need for these new ideas. There's going to be individuals that are going to go out, that are not going to go out in the soft way that generations are before. You know, they're not going to go the way that their grandparents went because they were told by their grandparents, this is the way that's got to be. And it's like, oh no, no. We're going to figure out some kind of way. And I've met some of those individuals. So I have hope that we'll start seeing this bit of shift in ageism. But I just believe that if you feel badly about that, really try to spend as much time as you can to come up with some kind of idea that is somewhat of a solution.
You know, I heard a lecture several years ago by a professor from the University of San Antonio on aging. They were doing medical research on aging. And he raised a question that I thought was profound at that point. He says, look, we're getting all these breakthroughs. People are living longer because we're finding ways to keep them alive longer. And then he says, but to live longer and not have a quality of life is a real question. Now, he wasn't addressing that question because he was trying to prolong life. But he raised the question of, okay, your life is prolonged, and I hear you saying, here's a way to gain a quality of life as your life is being prolonged. And it's every generation.
Right.
Look at how it's happening.
And that has been the new language that age scientists are using called health span.
Health span, okay.
Yeah, so they'll say that it's live long, die short. So the idea is that how can we keep that certain quality of life, you know, as up to a stage, but also what's important to understand is that we look at age through a rear view mirror. I'm not 20, 30, 40, 50, you know, and we judge ourselves by that. There's a great piece I read about a Kung Fu master who became a master when he was 40, all right.
Okay.
He realized to continue to be a Kung Fu master at 70, he had to do some other things. The point about that is that we've got this youth lock on ourselves and we're saying, well, you know, I'm having problems, I can't run or I can't do this. And it's like, forget about that. You've got to figure out what are your strengths now, and that's what a lot of these...
Now this is a key point. In other words, you accept where you are.
Exactly. And you've got to learn to adapt and not give up, because quit looking at where I used to be.
That's the way it used to be. No. Mm-hmm. Okay. But accept where you are and then make the change that is necessary.
Yes, but at the same time, you're going to find some influencers, some people in their 80s and 90s, and they're 100 years old, and you're going like, how did that son of a gun do that? And that's where I think, again, these masters of age that I'm working on and other people working on that want to know, you know, it's okay. Give up the ghost on running 100 miles an hour. Don't tell me you've only got one more plastic surgeon thing to do. You know, you've got one more lift. Figure out how to lift yourself up, with some individuals that are really doing these things. So I think that's a fascinating way to figure out what is in their toolkit that I could bring to my life. Because, and then taking care of yourself now, as this man has said to me, your older self will be so thankful. It will appreciate you later. So, like, I've seen situations where people in their 80s and even 90s started working with hand weights. There is an artist that I met when I was in New York, and he was 90, and he was putting on his toupee, and he was on the floor, and he was doing these hand weights before he went out to show his work. And I realized there is a workaround. And in fact, in my book, I have an individual that is so magnificent. He is a paraplegic, and he is creating exercises for individuals that are other paraplegics. So he's figured out a workaround. Now, he's not an older person. He's featured in this movie called Murder Ball, and it was his group that won the Paralympics in China. But I'm thinking about, you know, it's not to shame anybody, but you're thinking about how did this guy, who is burdened with all this, he's cracking the case. So I think it's important when you show older individuals, you don't try to show superstars. You really show people that were, you know, have led pretty ordinary lives. And there are so many. And just like what you said with that doctor, we're living, never in history have this quantity of individuals lived this long.
Right.
But like I said, there's a lot of work under the hood, the hood of your brain, that I think there's an opportunity to bring in new information.
Let me ask you, I'm going to flip this a little bit in this sense. We're obviously focusing, which is your expertise, we're obviously focusing on individuals as they get older. Okay, what about the coming generation? How should they view this culture change? What can they do with older parents? What can they do with older individuals that surround them, not to, quote, shame them, but to build them up to where they are able to survive, and also help themselves, the younger folks, the 30-year-olds. You know, 30 years old, you can conquer the world. There's nothing to stop you. You're out there, you've got the vim, the vigor, the vitality, you're ready to go. I've got goals up here, I'm going to do this. Well, that's good, and that's wonderful. But then how do they, with that sort of personality, impact the people who are sitting here thinking, I've got to go through this culture change or whatever, however they approach it? How do they interact from the younger side?
Well, you know, I guess it's, again, you're going to see it in sort of films and so on, and books that are out there. There's a magnetic field in telling your children what to do. Mm-hmm. You know, they are not your audience. You are their audience. Yeah. So if you have nephews, or you know, that I feel like you can be helpful with. But here's what's important is that I think that really great stories need to be told that love is a normal effect. And I'm going to tell you what it is. So what I'm saying is that if you pinch yourself, you feel a little bit of pain. If you fall in love, it is ageless. And it's important for younger individuals. I know when my father passed away, and I said to my brother, I said, boy, I wish Mom could meet somebody. He goes, oh my God, how can you say that? You know, and it was one of those things that I realized we have these set visions of who older individuals are. And, you know, we are the parents, and then we become this parent. And I think that it's important to be able to communicate that, look, I've got to have some sense of freedom. The idea of taking the keys away is not going to matter anymore with these autonomous cars. I believe. I think it's fantastic. But I think that if more stories are told about individuals, and I'm saying to these individuals, this is the thing about self-respect, is that we dismiss this is the long way around to your answer. We dismiss about all the things that we've done in our lives, all the things that we've overcome, and if there's a great storyline that can inform millennials about this, then they go like, wow, they went through all that. And they're thinking about the, if whatever the struggle, and I don't put everything down, I don't put anything down on what they're going through.
Oh, yeah.
God knows. So, if there is a way just to explain to people, I did this presentation, if we could talk to you, if you could meet a person that was a master in ironwork, or a chef, or an attorney, or let's say